Hi, I just want to continue this talk while I have the thoughts in my head. I was just saying that um, perhaps at some stage in a evolving paradise, if it is an evolving thing, um, or we're always evolving, even in a paradise, let's say, um, that maybe certain ill feelings wouldn't come up anymore related to sexuality and partnerships. So instead, what would happen, and perhaps this will be in our age of Aquarius, this is the way it'll be. We'll see. But um, when one person wants something different that's kind of a deal breaker in a sexual way, um, and again, like I said, sex can be many different things. But when that happens, people will just continue being friends, and then that person can, their partner or ex romantic partner can explore what they want to explore, and people have to keep in mind that, because people want to explore certain things at certain times in their life, doesn't mean that they won't come back around to, okay, now I kind of like, I explored that, and I don't, maybe they want to come back into just like um monogamy, and then that the former partner can decide whether they want them back. I mean, if there's hurt feelings, they won't, right? Want them back. But if people don't have hurt feelings and they just accept that, oh, this is something, I honor that person's wants and desires, and what they wanted to experience, then they can decide whether they want to take that person, or maybe now they have a new partner, so then no, they don't want. But you see, this is where it could get really interesting, is that I could get into all kinds of scenarios now. That person that was exploring their polyamory for a while, they might come back to their former partner and say, I want to be with you in that way again. Um, and then that person, and this could have been, over a long period of time before that person comes back. And then the other former partner says, well, actually, I have a new partner now, and I'm happy with her and whatever. But then um, there's another opportunity there. If that couple that used to be a couple wanted to explore polyamory again, and maybe the new partner does too, they could explore it at that point. But I know this is all sounding kind of like crazy and getting into all these combinations, and I'm just telling you that this is all related to the free flow of this life force energy. But in my paradise, there's going to be monogamous couples where they're not going to be polyamorous, but they're going to just let that life force energy flow in various ways by recognizing it for what it is, and then having intimate relationships that aren't physically sexual. Um, so we could explore that in other videos. I need to carry this one on, but um, what true intimacy is, because true intimacy isn't just sex. In fact, sex is just one expression of it. So um, that's another way that words have been twisted around and ideas have been twisted around in our current culture, is that intimacy has been equated with sex, but in fact, it's so much more. And it's something that is sacred and needs to be handled as such. So, um, there's going to be, in my paradise, there's, the way I see it, there's going to be a lot of polyamorous relationships, and then there's going to be very stable, happy, harmonious, monogamous relationship as well. And the polyamorous relationships will be the same. They will be very stable and harmonious. And if you look at the divorce rate nowadays and just consider that, never mind, there's a whole bunch of other things we could look into to support this insight and line of thought. But we could just say, oh, excuse me, the divorce rate is so high because, excuse me for a second, need to have a bit of smoothie. We could do like people have traditionally done and say, well, the divorce rate is high because there's evil in the world, because people do bad things because of the devil or whatever, evil forces influencing them and so forth. But I say that's a cop-out. And why? Because people are pointing at something that can just, kind of wash it away. It's so they don't have to look deep into themselves and really take responsibility for themselves and their own impulses and desires and whatnot. They don't have to be accountable for that. They can just say, oh, the devil made me do it, and so forth. So it's all related to that. And to that I say hogwash. Okay? We need to stop doing that kind of thing. Just dishing stuff off and saying, well, it happens because there's evil in the world. Well, you know what? Yes, there's different forces happening in this dance of creation all the time, but we're still sovereign beings we govern ourselves, and we always have an opportunity to bring light to any situation and or thing, whatever it is. So the same goes with relationships and sexuality and partnerships, marriage, whatever. That just as plausible, in my opinion, or I would say more plausible explanation for why there's such a high divorce rate is because people are just being people. People have a flow of life force, sexual energy happening all the time, and it can be expressed in certain ways, and has been, and that's caused a lot of breakups because people don't understand what's really going on and haven't accepted it yet, what's really going on. And no, it doesn't mean, sometimes people lose their love, that spark or whatever in a relationship, where they don't love a person in that way anymore. But I think more times than that happens, people still love their partner, their husband or wife, even though they want to explore these other relationships as well. So if that's true, if that really is true, then wouldn't it be incumbent on us as a evolving race to just come up with a better way of handling that whole reality and situation? Being real about it instead of pushing things under the carpet again and pretending like either like they don't exist or demonizing it or making it into the work of the devil and all this kind of thing. You know what? We can be the devil, or we can be the God, or the angel. And it's all in the choices we make, the what we choose to do with what we're given, the energies that are there and the forces in play, how we dance the dance. So coming back around to, again, what I was saying about the goddess and the suppression of the goddess, just to put it to you really quickly, there was a pre-Christian era that was probably thousands, I don't know how long, millions of years, whatever, that our Christian tradition has taught us to see as, just pagan revelry and blasphemy and all this kind of stuff. But there was a lot more to it than that. It wasn't that. And I'm not here to push paganism either, or any isms. But I'm just saying that there is bits of truth in all kinds of ways of looking at things, and cultures and societal beliefs, and etc. So there was a time when the goddess, and when I say the goddess, I'm talking about the female divine or sacred feminine principle, with all of her, in all of her glory, and was thriving in a natural, or let's say a more natural feminine state. So that's different than what we have seen for a very long time. And one of the ways it was different was that in these pre-Christian times and cultures that revered the goddess, in fact, they even worshipped the goddess, or they had a more feminine-led society. And we still see that with some tribal cultures around the world today. But the point is, there was no suppressing the goddess. In fact, in some cases, very much the opposite. They were revering the goddess, and that included a feminine sexuality that's much different than it's seen and expressed today. Now, we're taught to believe that feminine sexuality is to be, really almost like resistant to sex, right? And she can't show that she has much interest in it, or very receptive, or a woman is also supposed to be seen as being receptive, but girls are brought up to think of, sex as something that, they need to kind of like tone it down a whole bunch, so that they don't drive men into a frenzy and they get into all kinds of trouble. I mean, there's some practical sides to that, so that you don't have all these unplanned pregnancies and everything. But there's more to it than that, than just the practical things. And so with knowledge and understanding comes a higher way of living, a more harmonious, joyous way of living. So I believe in these pre-Christian times, and again, this isn't to take a stab at Christianity at all. I view myself as very much as a lover of Christ and a servant of Christ and so forth. But in these, let's say, organized religions, because there's been Gnostic, for example, Gnostic Christianity and so forth, which is much different than our traditional mainstream Christianity today. They had a different view on sexuality. And before that, and in the pre-Christian times, what Christianity would call paganism. But when we label things, we think we know what it is, but we don't. It's actually taking us farther away from the truth of what it is. So there were these cultures where women were just openly sexual, and they were free to explore that and embrace it, but not just that. They were free to be, say, strong and like the boss, And what's happened today is that with all of this suppression of women, it's turning around now, starting to anyway. But we've had all these male bosses, male dominated enterprises, and so there's been let's say a force behind that. It's not just by accident. So this just didn't happen. This wouldn't happen in these past cultures, pre-Christian cultures. And I say that's a very good thing, because what I want for our world, well, first and foremost, I want everybody to be their own leader, to have, express their leadership qualities. And so we just end up with a collaboration of leaders all the time. But some people are just more interested or inclined to leadership, and that's fine too. But it's, in my idea of paradise, there's not going to ever be just, one person calling the shots all the time. That's going to constantly change depending on the situation and, what somebody's expertise is or whatever. Like if somebody's got an expertise in, I don't know, building something or some kind of like, stone structure, masonry or whatever, then for that job, the person that is most knowledgeable about that will be the leader. And then the next job, it'll be a completely different person because it requires a different kind of expertise. But anyways, women would be allowed to be leaders whenever it's appropriate, and it just naturally flows that way. And there's going to be this complete harmony with men and the male, realizing that we all have, at the very same time, we would all realize that we have this masculine, feminine energies within us that we're keeping in balance. And so that if we keep that in balance inside, then there's also balance outside. So that means the interpersonal relationships, politics, social, religion, everywhere will be a balance. So if we don't see balance of those relationships between men and women, and women's roles and power and men's roles and power, if we don't see a balance of that in society, that means it's also out of whack inside of the individual. So this is part of this paradise I'm talking about, is that the male and the divine masculine, divine feminine will always be in balance within the individuals. And therefore we'll always see it on the outside too with relationships. So I'm getting a little bit off track again here, so just to pull it back in, that I'm saying there's going to be this reverence for the goddess as well as the god in my idea of paradise, but a balance, a healthy balance and wholeness of the two. And therefore, if women are being more, let's say, aggressive in a sexual sense, there still has to be agreement and permission, but then that'll be totally accepted. That won't be just seen as the male thing to do. So going back to the beginning of my video, where I started off, I feel like I may have sufficiently addressed the idea of this free flow of energy in my paradise, what that's all about, and also as it relates to relationships, sexual relationships in particular, marriages or romantic partnerships, whatever. I feel like I've addressed that a fair bit, and then brought in the idea of the goddess, and sort of seeing a reverence, like I said, for the goddess, and a understanding and non-suppression of the true, female sexuality, and also female qualities as a whole. And I'll tell you right now, one of the reasons why I focus so much on goddess sexuality and not just goddess as a whole is because I feel like that's one of the major ways that the goddess has been suppressed and controlled by manipulating the sexuality, and through state prescribed, state sanctioned marriages and so forth. And there's a whole long history that could get into there and how that's been done, but I'll just put it to you this way: it has something to do with ownership of people as if they were property, like a house, and also politics playing out, treaties, and people, aristocrats, let's say, in higher places, just being more politically oriented in how they do things, and then that's reflected in how marriages are sanctioned and manifested. So in my paradise, there'll always be a freedom of sexuality and acceptance of it and joy in it, and and also relationships will be so much more fulfilling than they are in most cases right now. I'm not saying always, but there's very fulfilling relationships going on right now, but they'll be, I would say, in just a much more healthy, whole, fulfilling way and state. And people will have so much more satisfaction in their lives because of that, and so much more expression of love at large, in public and in private. And that will be fully embraced and accepted as well, rather than this what tends to happen nowadays, and for a very long time, is there's more acceptance of violence and hatred on display in public than there is of love on display. And what's wrong with that picture? I would suggest there's a whole lot wrong with it. So that's something to think about, why that is. Why were Adam and Eve ashamed after eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Why did they then cover themselves up in shame? Look deeply into things, everything. Look deeply into that question right there. Why did they really feel ashamed? Was it because they should feel ashamed, because they were justified in being ashamed because sex is a bad thing? Or were they feeling ashamed because they got caught up in ideas, in dualistic ideas of things that have to do with separating rather than unity? Maybe the shame was more about the separation than the sexual feelings that they were having. Maybe it's because things got pushed into the dark when they were once in the light and they were living freely in harmony. How do you think we really got pushed out of Eden and lost paradise? And how do you think we really find paradise again? Do we do it by continuing to live in our head and get caught up in ideas and beliefs of things, and putting more labels on things and thinking we know what it is when we put a bunch of words and concepts on it? The more we analyze and conceptualize things, the less we know what it is. Just think about that. Because we turn it into something abstract when it's actually alive and real. What is the AI agenda? Is it, or let's say the negative AI agenda, is it making something real into something abstract? I'm just asking questions. I'm not telling you how it is. So anyway, just to finish this talk off, that we will have wonderful, open, free relationships in my paradise. We will have harmony between the sexes. We will have knowledge, understanding, which leads to wisdom in our sexuality and our choices that we make. And we will always have transparency and agreements and communication, leading to much healthier relationships. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again in the next talk.